Jordan. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Esteban Soto, a professor from the University of California, Davis, to provide an overview of the Aquatic Animal Health Program.
All right. Well, good morning or afternoon or night, wherever you are. It is a pleasure for me to introduce our group. And thank you again, for all the organizer for inviting us and let us share a little bit of what we do with all of you. So I was asked, to give a little bit of background of myself and of the lab. So I am a very proud Tico. So I'm born and raised, in this tiny paradise that we call Costa Rica. Costa Rica is a very small country in Central America, but we are privileged, of having a lot of water around us. And ever since I can remember, I have been drawn to the water. I love water. I love, being in the water, being in fresh water or marine water. And when I was in high school, I started working with different programs, for conservation of sea turtles, and other marine animals. And I started volunteering in a veterinary program, in a rescue center that was close to my house. So I went to college, to vet school. I did my veterinary training in La Escuela de Medicina Veterinaria in Costa Rica from 1998 to 2005, where, of course, most of the focus, as it is in many of the other vet schools, here in the US, and worldwide, focuses on traditional animals, so companion animals and productive animals, particularly cattle, horses, swine. But I was very lucky to be able to work with one of the pathologists, at a time I was very interested in pathology. And he started receiving cases, from aquaculture sector in Costa Rica, mainly in tilapia, where we have, particularly this type of, either net pens, in a different lakes, or these kind of flow through extensive systems for tilapia aquaculture. There was a big outbreak, in the last year that I was there in 2004 and 2005, that pretty much, collapsed, the industry. At that time, Costa Rica was the second largest exporter of tilapia to the US. And here I am, at that time, working with one of the cases, that we had. And nobody knew really what was going on, there in terms of what was causing the mortality events. So I was able to work with a couple of the researchers from Mississippi State University, with Dr. Michael Mowell, for a couple of months, and he gave me the opportunity right after vet school to join Mississippi State University, the College of Veterinary Medicine, where I pursue my master's program from 2005 to 2007, working with Phlebobacterium columnari, or what we used to call at the time, Phlebobacterium columnari, at the Tad Cochran National Warm Water Aquaculture Center. So had a great time there, and started dealing a little bit more into infectious diseases, particularly bacteria. After Mississippi State, I was able to join LSU, the School of Veterinary Medicine, under the supervision of Dr. John Hawk, where he gave me the opportunity to go back and study a little bit more in depth, on what was causing the collapse of the tilapia industry in Costa Rica, which we ended up, describing Francisella in tilapia, basically the first, reports, Franciscellosis in tilapia. Point case, being Francisella, basically the description of Francisella orientalis at the time. After LSU, I moved to the Caribbean, to this beautiful island in St. Kitts and Nevis, where I worked as a clinical microbiologist, in Ross University, the School of Veterinary Medicine, where I expanded a little bit from aquatic animals into wildlife, so we work with the African green monkeys, with different pests, let's call it like that, like the mongoose, and other rodents, in the Caribbean, and again, particularly how they interacted with different infectious agents. But of course, continue my love, to aquatics, and did some work with sea turtles and marine fish. In 2015, I moved to UC, where I have had the privilege, to work with a lot of these absolutely great colleagues. The lab has changed, of course, as it should, when people move, take other positions, from when I started. But these are just two photos of different generations, in the lab, where excellent work, has occurred. And what we do is pretty diverse, in focus. We do some work with aquaculture, not only for human consumption, in which, we have, of course, salmonids, tilapia and white sturgeon as a main host, to study, but also ornamentals, where we focus a lot of efforts, with koi, particularly, as it is particularly important, for the West Coast. We work very closely with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, in conservation medicine. This is Samuel, my little one. He loves, to go there, to the raceways, and feed the fish. Where we work, particularly again, with different native salmonids, in California. We have a close program with different aquariums. We have the Aquatic Animal Health Fellowship, where we collaborate with Long Beach Aquarium, with Monterey Bay Aquarium, and with the Steinhardt Aquarium. And particularly in training programs, that typically developed into different research programs. And of course, as we work in academia, education is, one of our top priorities, where we try to train, not only veterinary students, undergraduate students, but also residents, fellows, and other colleagues, basically in different areas, of fish medicine. We provide clinical services through the Veterinary Teaching Hospital, where we particularly see goldfish and koi. Probably 90% of our clientele, is in cyprinids, in pet fish. But we do also, see other ornamental species. And research-wise, we have particular love towards infectious diseases. Again, all of these hosts, basically we try to study not only the host, response, but also the microorganisms, that cause, these diseases. We focus on infectious disease from diagnosis, treatment to prevention, and then use different models in vitro and in vivo to understand, this interaction, between the host and the pathogen. I love this diagram from Dr. Plum and Hanson. So I always use, to try to explain basically that interaction, where we basically look into the pathogen, but also those environmental conditions that can impact, the relationship between the pathogen and the host and increase the disease potential. So that's about it for the program, and I will stop sharing and open the floor for questions if we have time. If not, we can jump in with the cool people that will present today.
Thanks a lot, Esteban. Great overview. You got a lot of stuff going on, and it's the only place you'll hear people loving the infectious diseases. So we do have a little bit of time for questions if folks have them. Otherwise, we can move on. Feel free to unmute yourself or drop them in the chat. Sounds good.